Good evening, everyone. This is the Renegade Society radio show, and we are so lucky today to have one of the most awesome designers we know with us, Jon Gilmour, and he is going to be talking to us about a whole bunch of really fun stuff today. So welcome.
Wait, what about me? You forgot all about me as usual.
I did forget about you. I'm sorry. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm here.
Well, we're very, very happy to have Scott Gaeta, president of Renegade Game Studios, as well.
I beg to differ with that statement.
It's very exciting. All three of us are here, and that we have all of our technical equipment working. That is a miracle, in fact. Awesome. Well, now that we have all the formalities out of the way. Oh, no. So, Jon, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good, good. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm not sure everybody knows how super duper awesome you are and what you have going on in this incredible industry that we work in.
I'm a designer. I've been a full-time designer for about 2 years now. My first big game was Dead of Winter. I followed that up with a couple smaller releases. I did Vault Wars and Heroes and Tricks. And then since then, I've done a couple of bigger games, Dinosaur Island, Path of Light and Shadow, and Wasteland Express Delivery Service. I think this year at Gen Con, I hit 10 games on the market. So,
Wow.
I'm busy. I've got probably 30 to 40 in the pipeline at various stages. So I try to keep myself pretty busy. And most recently, one of my big projects was Kids on Bikes.
That's right.
With Doug Lewandowski.
Yeah, we are pretty excited about that one.
So what made you begin to design games? Like, what got you started?
I was in a technical job in a factory working a ton of hours, and I was just really creatively stifled, and I had rediscovered board games a couple of years prior. And growing up, I did a lot of art stuff and a lot of creative stuff. And then, now as an adult, I had kids, I worked a lot of hours, and I just felt really creatively stifled. So I was like, well, I'm going to try designing some board games. So I did a couple, and they were real bad. And then I did a print and play game that I released called Pocket Dungeon, which is a procedurally generated dungeon crawler, kind of like the video game Road or NetHack, but it's disguised as a to-do list, and you use a pad of Post-it notes to roll dice, so that you can play it in a meeting or at the office without getting caught. So I released that, and that did really well. It was nominated for a Golden Geek Award the year it came out, and it was one of the most downloaded files. And that really spurred me on to do more. So then I started working on what became Dead of Winter. And when I met Isaac, I was originally just going to release Dead of Winter as a print and play game. Like, I was just doing it as a creative outlet. I didn't think any of my stuff was good enough to be published. I was just going to let people have it for free. And Isaac played Dead of Winter, and he's like, no, this is really good. Will you co-design it with me? Or I can just take the stuff I like from it and do it myself. And I was like, well, co-designing sounds real good in that situation. So then we worked together on it, and after a year or so of developing it together, we pitched it to Plaid, and then from there, it kind of allowed me the freedom to explore it as a career option.
So how big of a life changer was Dead of Winter for you?
Pretty huge. It was way more successful than I ever thought it would be. It definitely allowed me to have the freedom to leave my job I was at. I'm lucky that I live in the middle of Ohio, or the northwest corner, so the cost of living out here is super cheap. My wife and I, we don't buy a lot of fancy stuff, so we were able to look at our finances and what Dead of Winter was doing and say, well, hopefully this will continue for a year or so, and give me some time to get some other things to market. So I mean, it absolutely changed my life.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Very neat. So that was Dead of Winter. And then what was your next game after that one, did you say?
I did Vault Wars after that, which is kind of inspired by modern art by Reiner Knizia. It's a light auction game with some hidden information and some bluffing. And it was originally themed after Storage Wars, which is a TV show that I absolutely hate. But every time I see it on TV, I'm like, oh, this would make a great game. I don't enjoy this at all, but and I started working on it when I was traveling a lot for work, because it seemed like every time I would go to another factory to work, it would just be Storage Wars, like marathons, and that was the only thing on TV.
So the funny thing is, Storage Wars, that show is filmed in the area where I lived. It's all in San Diego County, Orange County, and LA County. And those guys are such idiots on that show that when I'm watching that show, it makes me angry. And my wife is always telling me to shut up. And I'm always saying that I'm gonna go to these things and just to mess with those guys. Like, yeah, they're like right here in our area. I think the show's gone though, finally. So
I think so.
Wow, it was on forever.
Yeah, it was on for a long time.
Yeah,
but I really liked like the mechanics of like the guy in the back, like trying to bump up auctions that he really had no interest in. And
yeah,
I like the idea of like everybody having some portion of knowledge about, like, you know, everybody could see different things in the storage unit. So those were the kind of things that I wanted to model in that game.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a fun game. Like I could actually see myself getting addicted going to these auctions, not because I want any of the crap in there, just because the game of getting a glance in that container and then trying to figure out, you know, whether or not I can beat the other people, and then it's a slot machine, right? Like maybe I made my money back, maybe I didn't. So yeah, it's I don't need to go to those things. I would start like holding them.
Yeah.
So when you're game designing, do you think about the theme first? Is that what inspires you to make the game, or do you like thinking about the mechanics to begin with?
I actually consider myself an experience first designer, because a lot of people are mechanics or theme, but I try to think of the experience that I want the players to have and build out from there. And I feel like to do that, it has to be a proper marriage of theme and mechanics. So I like to start in the middle and then work out from that.
That makes a lot of sense. It really shows in the games that you have. They're very experience based. I don't know of another better way to put that, because they're really different, and the experience that you get playing your games, I've never had in other games before. So that's really interesting. I've never had a designer tell me that they work that way. So that's fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. What game had you played previously, or what games were influences on you as far as that goes? Like, you know, I'm sure that you kind of like went through a lot of different processes before you kind of found that out about yourself. Was there anything that kind of helped you along the way?
I think a lot of it is because I really consider game design an art form. And I think with any art, like, it's important to take inspiration from a lot of different things. So like with Dead of Winter, A Game of Thrones was a huge influence. And like some of the psychological tricks that George R.R. Martin pulls with his readers, they don't really realize, like, you know, spoiler alert, a major character dies like at the end of the first book, the person that you think the book's about.
Yeah.
And that does a psychological trick of making you really care about the characters. And I realized, like, oh, well, if you just kill off characters right away in a game, like, people will get super attached to what they have left. Or like video games, Minecraft was another big inspiration, because, you know, I really looked at that and said, oh, well, you can do a lot with procedural or with emergent storytelling in games. Like if you give players just a little bit of a skeleton to hang a story on, like, they'll tell a great story themselves. You don't have to do, you know, scripted events. And even though Dead of Winter has a lot of story in the Crossroad cards, there's even more story in what the players build up on themselves. Mm-hmm. As far as board games, I think really the one for me was Cosmic Encounter. That's kind of where I really fell in love with modern board games. And, you know, I said that and I realized that these things can be like a big event when we sit down and play them. And, you know, we talk about, you know, the first time the classic Filch Flare came out in one of our games. And, you know, that was 6.5 years ago. And, like, everybody who's in that game still talks about it. And I realized, like, that's the type of game that I want to make, is the games that people will talk about way after they're done playing them.
It's almost like a water cooler type of experience, right? Where, yeah, we all kind of get together afterwards and talk about what happened and bitch and moan and right, right, and yeah, armchair quarterback the thing. That's cool.
Yeah, your games are interesting because they feel like legacy games in that experience that you get with them and the stories that you tell afterwards, but without the legacy part of it. And I don't know about any other games that really do that very well. That's super cool.
I so incredibly respect what Rob does. I never want to do a legacy game. They're just, I can't even wrap my head around that much. This is design work.
Crossing that one off the list. Don't.
Are there any types of games that you would really love to design?
I've been really lucky because of Dead of Winter. I've been able to explore a lot of different stuff. Like Dead of Winter not Dead of Winter, Dinosaur Island. Like I wanted to do a Euro game, so I got to do like a nice worker placement. It's still really thematic, but I got to explore that style of game. It was real important to me after Dead of Winter when I kind of swung the other direction with Vault Wars and did a light auction game. Like I wanted to make sure that I didn't get locked in as like the zombie game guy or like I'm okay being the thematic game guy, but I want to do like a wide breadth of them.
That's awesome. So role-playing games. What was your background with role-playing games? I mean, now that we know that you're a story guy, I'm guessing that there's something there.
Oh, absolutely. And that was another big influence of Dead of Winter is we wanted to take some of the stuff that we were experiencing with games like Fiasco and other modern storytelling games like that kind of take the RPG genre. Because I grew up, you know, trying to play Dungeons and Dragons as often as I could, but it never really happened. I think I spent more time reading the books than anything. And looking at the modern style storytelling games that are less rules intensive and more, you know, weaving that story together. And I wanted to kind of bring that into board games. And with Kids on Bikes, Doug and I had a conversation early on that we wanted to go in the other direction and take an RPG and kind of bring some board game elements into it. Like, especially in the way that like the skills work. They're very much like asymmetric player powers that have triggers, and there's things that you can spend things on. Where in like every other RPG, skills are just skills, and they're like, oh, you can swim, you get a +2 whenever you swim. And like that's not super exciting, but in a board game, like when you have a power that's like swimming, you can spend 2, you know, whatever points and do a cool thing. Like that's super fun. I think in the background you can see there's like a huge shelf or 2 shelves of RPGs that I never get to play. I get to read a lot, but I never seem to be able to get people together to play them.
So I had the pleasure of actually getting to go through the Kids on Bikes Ashcan version rules, which are free online right now. It's sort of a beginner set of rules that you guys were kind enough to create. So I did that over Christmas break, and I played it with a bunch of people who I usually play board games with. And I knew that if we started out with a group that had that type of experience, it would be really interesting to see if we had a good time playing an RPG. And what I really liked about was it had a little bit of that resource management. It had a little bit of these things that we would expect to find in a board game, but it was so intuitive. And we got to tell these stories together, and we were excited to come back for the next session and see what happened with our characters. And I haven't played RPGs basically ever before. So it was really cool to get to do that for myself and just hang out with my friends and do this fun thing, even though we weren't experienced and the rules were just so straightforward. We could jump in and do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go for it.
That was really important to us because we realized like there are a ton of board gamers who've never played an RPG, and playing an RPG for the first time is really daunting. Like, my brother-in-law recently picked up Shadowrun, and he's never really played an RPG before.
Wow.
And he's like, I've read this rule book and it doesn't tell me how to play the game. And I was like, yeah, like that's the exact kind of thing we wanted to address is, you know, we want to make a game that was easy for somebody to pick up the rule book and learn how to actually play it.
Right. Yeah, and make it a little intuitive, right?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people it's really strange, right? Like role-playing games are the most basic form of play. It's make believe.
Yeah.
But we become adults and then we're like, what? I don't get the concept. It's like, what are you talking about? This is the first thing that you ever did as a child was make believe. Yeah. But it's hard, I think, for adults to wrap their mind around it. Like I am so proud of myself because Sarah now plays role-playing games.
I blame both of you.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That's right. Yeah, she's right. But I think that was a similar sort of thing too, right? Like your perception of role-playing games was kind of like, what? Like really? As an adult, is that really a thing that I want to do?
Well, I really like having rules and I like things to fit in these little boxes and I like being competitive. And so there's all these things that you think of as being a board game player. And it's hard to sort of take a step back and say, you know what, I can actually have fun doing this thing, telling a story together. And when I think about my board gaming experiences that I've loved more than any of them, it actually comes down to the same type of things that I like now about role playing, like playing Pandemic Legacy and having my character die and having the story happen, or playing Dead of Winter and having those same types of experiences. That's the fun part of playing board games. It's not how many little wooden chips I can collect by the end of the game, although that's what I'm thinking about when I'm playing a board game. So now as I play role-playing games, I got to think about the fun part the whole time. Yep. So it's really different, and I think that's awesome.
That was something that we found with Dead of Winter, because it kind of there were players who were very, very fixated on winning. And they're like, this is what the game says, and this is how I win. And then there are players who would just experience the story, and they wouldn't care if they won or lost. And they would, like, the most beautiful thing about it, in my opinion, is watching players make decisions based on their morals and like what their character would do, because you don't typically do that in board games. You're like, oh, this is the optimal decision for me. I'm going to go and collect this 5 wood so that I can build this house. Like, it's not like, oh no, my guy would totally just like sit around all day and do this, and he wouldn't collect wood.
Right.
So if you can trick players into like stepping outside of that very structured thing and like just making some decisions based on doing the fun thing, I think you get interesting results.
That's such a interesting statement that in some cases we need to trick players into doing the fun thing. Right?
Strange but true.
I think there's a lot of like psychological trickery that we can benefit from as game designers. Like there's a lot of things that players just don't inherently do that we kind of lead them to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. So somebody in chat asked, do you tend to work with an exciting theme first and create a game around that, or start with mechanics and work on theme later?
I mean, usually the closest I can say is theme, but usually it's more like, who do I want to be in this game? And I guess that ties into the theme somewhat, but I like to really say, like, what do I want the players to feel like they're doing, and you know, how can I best let them do that without like throwing too many rules on them? Because it's real easy to design a game with like a million rules that let you do a ton of different things. But when it's different variations of the same thing, like I really love what's the 2-player Uwe Rosenberg that just came out a couple of years ago?
Caverna Cave versus Cave?
No, it's a big box 2-player game.
Oh, Fields of Arle?
Yeah, Fields of Arle. Like I love that because even though there's like 30 different worker spaces, there's really only like 5 different things that you're doing in the game. Mm-hmm. And it gives you this like beautiful sandbox feel of being able to do whatever you want. And I think games like that are super appealing.
Definitely. One thing that I really appreciated about Kids on Bikes that made it a little bit easier for a new RPG player like myself jumping into it was the powered character. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, the powered character in Kids on Bikes was really interesting because it came from the discussion between Doug and I of like, oh, well, if we let the players have powers, like everybody's just going to want to be a powered character and nobody's going to be a normal teenager. And like this game needs normal teenagers put into perilous situations. And if everybody can just like fly away or is invulnerable, then that's just not going to happen. So
Right.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, so I was going to say, right, like that's the difference between this genre that we're trying to have fun in and like Heroes, right?
Yeah.
Like Heroes, the TV show was just right, like it was the X-Men. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody was an X-Man. Okay, great. That's not very fun, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I guess it would be fun to be an X-Men, but not.
I think they need stakes, especially because we got together on Kids on Bikes right after Stranger Things season 1 came out. Like my friends and I all watched it right away, and Doug watched it, and he had posted on Facebook, "Who wants to do a Stranger Things board game?" And I sent him a message, and I was like, "Hey, I'm already kind of working on a Stranger Things board game that I want to pitch, but what if we did an RPG instead?" And he was like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." So we talked about all the things that are really important about Stranger Things, and the stakes are, super there. So in Kids on Bikes, the powered character isn't controlled by one player. Each player controls a different aspect of the powered character. So we each have a different thing that we control, and if in this story, I want to activate the powered character's power, and Sarah's in charge of that. Like I'll just tap the card and let you know that it's time for you to take over and narrate the powered character.
And I really like that as a player because I had my own character that was this wimpy teenager that would run around and do things. But then we also were all sharing this narrative of this powered character. So we could play off each other a little bit more. And I could see what the other players in our group were adding to that character. And so it wasn't just me. There was a lot less pressure to make that story for that character cool all on my own because we were all doing it. And so I think that as a new player, it made it easier for me. It was sort of like baby steps towards doing this narrative storytelling game.
Yeah, and it takes pressure off as a GM because it's not like, oh, well, now the GM has to dictate everything for the powered character. And also I found like as adults that sometimes think like, oh, well, we don't really have good imaginations and we're not good at, like describing imaginary things. Like if we can give you questions, which is something that like all the Powered by Apocalypse type games do, like if you give the players questions, it's much easier for them to describe and answer a question. So like if I'm like, what does the powered character do with their power? You're just answering that question. It's not like you had to premeditate what you wanted to do. And as a group, we tend to tell better stories than just one of us trying to narrate everything.
Yeah. I also really like in the game how the players not only, right, so everybody goes through, and when you get ready to play a role-playing game, one of the first things you do is you have kind of that session where we don't play, but we all build our characters. And that's still part of the game. But then the other thing that you guys added, which I thought was really cool, is the players can create the setting of where the game is going to take place, like what's the town and what are the characteristics of this town, and it can get really detailed. And there's a guide, kind of not really rules, but a guide for how to do that in the book. Tell us a little bit about where that came from, because I think that's really innovative. That's super cool.
Well, that's definitely, I mean, it comes from the Powered by the Apocalypse style games. They really changed my viewing of RPGs because, as you know, I just don't have time to prepare for an RPG campaign anymore. Like I really like being able to just sit down, and in most of the Powered by Apocalypse stuff, it's all just character driven. There's not really the world building that we do, but we each have a character sheet and we answer questions about our characters, and that gives us a little bit of information about the world. Like you might say what town you're from, and I'll say like who the bad guy in the world is. So we wanted to kind of take that and narrow its focus down to like, what's the heartbeat of a small town, and how can you make that feel alive in just like this small subset of questions?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I mean, that piece of the book to me even is something like as a writer or somebody that's creating, like to go through that process with a group would be really fun, right? Like just to see what you come up with and then say, oh, we've got this setting now. Now let's come up with stories that take place in that town. I mean, it works perfectly for the role-playing game, but I can even see using that process outside of the game.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be really neat.
Well, and I think that just the way that you made the Kids on Bikes mechanics are just so open to being able to create lots of really cool stuff that I was really impressed when I was looking at the whole project altogether, that you and Doug weren't the only writers for the book either. You have all of these adventures that have been written by guest writers, basically, who also want to sort of put their fingerprint on this exciting project a little bit. So could you tell us a little bit about those extra adventures and sort of how you get those and where that came from?
Yeah, that was a really exciting portion of it, when we got to kind of go through and like start making a big list of like, who are our friends in the industry that we really want to work with, and who can we give a voice to in our project, because that's kind of something I always try to think about is, how can I involve other people that may not have the same chances that I do, and how can I use my essentially my privilege to help out other people to get their name on things. So it was super exciting. I mean, we have some obviously big name people there, and a lot of that came through working with Hunter's books, because Ivan kind of knows everybody in the RPG industry.
Yeah.
And I just have like this small like crossover section of like the RPG industry people who go to Metatopia. I know them, but that's like this very small section, and mostly like LARP and like story game people.
Yeah, that's neat. It's interesting how the lines are starting to be blurred though between, right, like the board game kind of faction in our industry and role-playing games and everything else. It's like role-playing games are on the rise again. And all the online shows, like my oldest son is a perfect example of this. He discovered, it was actually pretty funny. Like one day he asked me, he's like, "Have you ever heard of the show Critical Role?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I've heard of it." And he's like, "Yeah, I've been watching it and playing in a weekly game now with my friends. And once we're done with this adventure, this campaign, then I'm going to run the next campaign and everything else." And this is totally independent of me. He played in games with me when he was younger, but then he went, for a long stretch where he wasn't playing at all. And I've literally got like 4 bookcases in the other room full of role-playing books. And he's out there buying books and stuff. I'm like, I've got books. But he was really an online player. I mean, he was like a hardcore, PvP type, online player, super, super competitive. And now he's discovered this storytelling sort of experience, and he's all in. I mean, he's working on his campaign during the week. He's in college, so he's got time. But but yeah, it's like that those lines are being blurred. It's really, really cool.
I think the more that happens in the industry, not just with like, there used to be a pretty hard division between like Euro and Amerithrash games as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's something we've seen in the last like 5 years, is like the more like Matt and Ben call it Mid-Atlantic, and I love that. Like that, that's like the merging of the two. And when you mix those with RPG elements, I think if you take the best things out of all those things, you're just going to make better art.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I'm a big critic of like the labels on games. Like one of my pet peeves is like gateway games. No, it's just a game. Right? It's just a game. And it might be a gateway game for somebody that's playing Feast for Odin. That's the way they may be. But at the end of the day, it's just a game. Like just take it for what it is and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had a great question in the chat room. Somebody asked, are there classes in Kids on Bikes? And what is your favorite class to play as or to GM Master for?
So we didn't really want to do classes with Kids on Bike because we didn't want to. We did include some tropes for people who want to get into the game faster, but we really wanted people to create whatever character they wanted to, and we didn't want you to feel like you had to create a jock or a nerd or these different tropes that we really know from A, from high school, and B, from the movies and TV shows. But complicated characters that kind of share things from multiple areas are just more interesting. So we did put some of those tropes in there, but really I think it's the most fun when you just create a character. And again, like Scott was saying, get rid of those labels and just like make a neat character that has these quirks. As far as like other RPGs, I usually really like to play like sneaky rogue type characters just because I think they're fun.
Yep. So one thing that I loved about the character creation in Kids on Bikes is the backpacks. And it sort of reminds me about the whole way that you game design, because you have a backpack and it's just a bag of holding like you would have in any other game. But there's so much more focus on that, and what you put in it is just so open that I found with my group when we were building our characters that the things that we put in our bag were the story that we were trying to tell about our past as a character. And that was what really helped us focus, instead of trying to figure out, am I a jock, am I a nerd, whatever. It's like, well, I have this thing that reminds me of my parents that I keep in my bag with me all the time. And those were the parts of the story that kept coming back up again. And the ideas of what type of character we were, that was never important. And I thought that was just really different from other games that I'd played.
Yeah. That was totally Doug on that one. We kind of started out making the game a little bit more crunchy and rules heavy for a while. But then at one point we were like, no, listen, like, what if we just take, like, we wanted to evoke Dungeons and Dragons on some level. Because in Stranger Things, like, that was an important thing, is like the kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons. So we're like, well, how can we make people feel like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons without having like THAC0 and like horrible annotated rules? And we're like, oh, well, let's just give everybody a set of polyhedrals. Like, and then you have all the dice, and you're rolling all the dice all the time. And then we're like, well, what about carrying limits and encumbrance? And we're like, no, let's just give them a backpack. And like the backpack, you put whatever you want in it, and you let the players explore that to mean whatever they like.
Well, it worked well for our group, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I had a whole chemistry set in my bag. It was awesome.
So Sarah, we're gonna have to get a game going, and I think your character needs to be like a short round trope.
That sounds fine.
Okay. All right. Just because I want us to call you short round.
Oh, funny. No labels, as long as I don't have to have a label.
Not a label, a name.
Oh dear. We did have another question too. Somebody was wondering if there's a lot of art in the book and who did the art. I do not actually know off the top of my head. Is it Heather? Am I right about that?
Heather Vaughn did all the art for the core book. And we kind of asked around for some people because we wanted to. It's very. Doug and I are both white dudes, and we wanted to kind of feature non-white, non-dudes for everything else in the book as much as we could. So, like, we put a call out for, exclusively, female artists, and she was one of the ones that got suggested, and we love the things that she submitted to us, and she was just so perfect for it. And then again, when we went to do the modules, Heather was doing some more pickup art for the book, so she didn't have time to get all the modules done. So we put another call out and found, I think, 6 different artists that we used for the modules that all did fantastic work.
I love the style of the art in this book. This is one of my favorite pieces. So this is just a mock-up book. This isn't actually a final thing, how it's going to look. I just made this for a show we have coming up that we'll talk about more. But I just absolutely love this piece of art. This is the beginning sort of splash page for the powered characters. And I just think that's really super cool.
Yeah, that's
not
one of my
like
favorites.
anything
I want that framed. I want all the pieces framed in my office, but I don't think they'll all fit.
There's a lot of art in this book. It's really nice that way. Because I know when you have just one artist, it's hard for somebody to do that much art in a book. We're going through that as well right now. And so that's really neat that she was able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, so you're going to get a bunch of Heather art and put it all around your office?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. That sounds good. That's my favorite thing. So every time we commission an artist, my first question to Anita is, does this artist work traditionally or digitally? Because I really want an original, right? Like, and so many artists work digitally nowadays. So
yeah,
I get excited when I hear somebody might work originally.
I don't know if her stuff, I assume it's mostly digital because it has a very,
I think her
like,
stuff's digital.
Yeah.
80s, I don't know, sort of synthetic look. I really like it. It's so perfect for this.
Yeah.
So Sarah, Jameson is probably watching right now. So Jameson is my youngest son, and he's 11, so he is literally a kid on a bike. And he's obsessed with this genre in general. And when he found out that we were doing this, he's like this little kid that walks into my office like every week going, "Can we play kids on bikes?" And I'm like, "No, I'm working." He goes away. Okay. And it's just like over and over again. But now he saw that you have a printed version of the book, even though it's not real. So I know what's going to happen. We're going to get done with this, and I'm going to walk out, and he's going to go, "Can I have a? I can't have a copy of the book
yet." Well, tell him he has to go to Staples and figure out how to make it himself.
Exactly.
That's what I did.
Yeah. He's literally stalking me about this game. It's awesome.
It sounds so cool. Perfect for him. And that's kind of interesting because there's this whole demographic of kids that are discovering the 80s right now and are just in love with it. It's so bizarre to me because I lived through that. I'm surprised that anybody wants to go back there. But now that I see it again, there is this really great nostalgic feeling. And I think it is really a different setting because we have a cell phone connected to our arm all the time now. And so going back to this place that's completely mysterious, we don't have the internet, we can't just find the answer. I think that makes for a really different and interesting setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So somebody asked, when is it coming out? When can they get Kids on Bikes, Sarah?
So it is being printed now, I believe, which means it still has to go on a boat, which is going to take a little while, but then it should be here in either late April, early May. And it was a Kickstarter, so all of those Kickstarter backers who were able to jump on board early will get theirs very quick. But for those of you who did not, you can also go to our website right now and pre-order it, and then you'll get it at the same time as the Kickstarter backers.
Awesome.
So we wanted to leave that as an option.
So John, assuming this goes over well, which we think it's going to go over well, what would you like to do next in this Kids on Bike space? Do you have any other ideas that we can talk about, or just vague, wish list sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Doug and I started having that conversation in the middle of the Kickstarter. We're like, oh, well, this is going way better than we expected. Like, we're like, okay, we might fund 15,000 and do all right. But when it started getting a lot of traction and people were really excited about it, we're like, well, what can we do next? So we've been talking about how we would change it up to do like teen science fiction, because that's a really exciting genre to us that I don't think is explored real well. Like, there's tons of great science fiction RPGs, but they're all like either hard sci-fi but they're not so much focused on like the teen stuff like Valerian or other books and movies. And we've definitely talked about some like dream IP stuff that we could do. So that would be exciting.
Yep. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Scott always has his fingers in a few different IPs that nobody knows about. Just the way it goes.
Yeah, that's in 2 weeks when we see you. So no, it's cool. I'm really excited about it, and I think people out there are excited about it too. So when are we're going to be showing this to people next week, right, Sarah? Like,
yes, so
demoing it?
We are. So next week we are going to GAMA trade show, which is the Game Manufacturers Association. And that's a really fun show for us because it's just publishers, designers, manufacturers, and distributors. So it's not open to the public, but we're going to be doing some live shows from the show floor. We're going to be walking around and giving everybody some little insider info about what goes on there. And one of the things that we get to do is called the RPG Lounge. And it's an event that happens on Tuesday evening where we get to sit down and teach retailers how to play our RPGs. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Ivan's going to come and teach Kids on Bikes for us. And then we'll also have Paul and George teaching Overlight. So we have a couple tables. It should be pretty fun. And it'll be the first chance that retailers get to sit down and really see this. And that's important for them because then they can go back to their stores and tell all of their DMs and all of their GMs and players and everybody about the system. So it makes a big difference for us.
If anybody's a non-insider person and lives near Toronto, I'll be at Breakout next week with the game as well.
Oh, nice.
So that's a convention up in Toronto.
Yep. That's cool.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And then, of course, for anybody who's going to conventions this summer, we're going to be at Origins and Gen Con, and we'll have tons of stuff going on for this there as well.
We actually have a pretty big RPG presence this summer at the big shows, right?
Yeah, we will. It'll be great. And also free RPG day. We haven't announced this quite yet, but we will be doing a Kids on Bikes free RPG day.
Yay.
So there's some good insider info. I'm so happy that the Hunters Books team got together and really made that happen super fast. Because after we announced that we were partnering up with you guys, you didn't have a lot of time in between then and when we needed to make the free RPG day files. So I was super happy you got to pull that together.
Well, I don't know if they looped you guys in how the module for that came around. We had somebody post on RPG Geek that like he and his daughter were playing the game weekly.
Wow.
And he's like, well, I was really wondering how to write a module. And I was like, well, I'll loop you on an email with Doug and I so we can kind of give you some hints. And then we had him and the gentleman and his daughter help write the module for free RPG Day.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so cool. I read that post and it was just heartwarming. That was so neat. He really wanted to play a game with his daughter, and this just ended up being perfect because he hadn't played RPGs before, and so this was an easy one to jump into. And yeah, that you should go find that post if you haven't read it for all you fans in the chat room because it was super.
Yeah, it's on the RPG page for Kids on Bikes.
That's really cool. So what else do we have going on, Sarah? Something's coming up with Overlight, or is something happening tomorrow?
Yes. So if you do like RPGs or games in general, you should definitely be signed up for our Overlight newsletter list. So it's separate from our regular Renegade fan list. And if you sign up for that every single week, we post cool new stuff that you don't hear about anywhere else for a few days afterwards. So things like we've been posting sketches from Kwanchai Moria as he works on the art for the game. We've been posting a few little tidbits about the rules info. And next week we have, tomorrow we have a great surprise. And so definitely sign up for the newsletter and then you'll be the first people to see that. And Steph is awesome and already posted a link in the chat room. So if you're wondering where to go to do that, you can check out that link.
Yeah, so Kwanchai Moria's art for Overlight has been absolutely amazing. I think this is the most art he's ever done for a game ever. We basically filled up his schedule for about, 3 or 4 months. And he even at one point said, dude, this is really a lot of art and it's a lot of money. Do you want to spend all this money for all this art? And we went over the list and I was like, yeah. Yeah, I
Scott's just trying to figure out where to put all the art in his house. That's what's really happening. That was the real question. Do you have walls to put this on?
I do. I have tall ceilings.
Will Robin let you put all this art on your walls? No, she'll probably let you put this art. This is pretty good stuff.
A couple things. Yeah, so that's one of the things that Kwanchai is doing for this project. So it's a boatload of art, right? Because we're not just creating an RPG. We're creating a whole world that we're going to develop other games in this world. So we're creating this world of Overlight, and the first product just happens to be a role-playing game, because when you're world building, a role-playing game is really what you would be doing anyway, right? So, and that's how it originally came to us from George and Paul. But we're creating all this art for the book, but also for building the world. But he's actually doing a handful of pieces where they're not digital, where he's painting. So we decided that we wanted about a half a dozen of these pieces that are iconic pieces for each of the shards to just go above and beyond. And he's actually doing them traditionally and painting them. So it's super exciting, but it takes more time. But the textures and everything are just amazing. His stuff, like, he keeps posting stuff as he's finishing. All the finished artists now, like, just the floodgates are open and it's all coming in as we're laying out the book. We've been going chapter by chapter as the art's coming in and plugging it all in as it's coming in through Slack, and then Anita's doing her thing. But yeah, it's incredible. So tomorrow, Sarah, don't disappoint people. You better show them something good.
It's going to be amazing.
I just built you up.
Yeah, I think people are going to be pretty happy about. I will say that I have changed my backgrounds based on what we're revealing tomorrow. It's pretty cool. So yeah, we're going to be doing that tomorrow. And then later this week, or I guess early next week, you're going to start seeing posts from Steph about live stuff that we're doing at GAMA. We have a ton of announcements next week that we can't share with you quite yet, but some really cool stuff that we've been working on for a long time. So that's always fun for us, because we've been thinking about this stuff for months and months, and now finally we get to share it with you. So definitely keep an eye on our feeds next week for all that stuff. What else do we have going on? Oh, you know what we haven't done yet? We need to do this. Who's ready for a giveaway? The chat room excited about that. We have a game that we will be giving away if you can be the first person to guess the game based on the component. And this one is going to be a bonus, extra difficult one. So first person to guess this, I'll throw in something.
Can I play?
No, you can't play. I'll make you a deal that you can play if you do not already have this game on your shelf.
Well, I'm out.
All right. Everybody ready for this? Jon, you also can't play because you get about a 4-second lead time, I'm afraid.
Okay.
That's all right. We'll make you a deal, and I will print your book instead. How about that?
That's a deal.
Okay, good.
I'm in.
Awesome. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Can everybody see this piece? It's bright red because that's Steph's favorite color, and she's going to be watching the chat room for us very carefully to figure out who wins this one. And I don't see any guesses yet. Oh, we need a very specific answer to this one. I see some close guesses. Almost, but not quite right yet.
You're looking for the full name?
I'm looking for the full name of this exact thing.
The full name of the game.
Yes. What would be on the front of the box where you would find this piece? Oh, we have a winner. I believe that John Paul has won before. That's pretty exciting. You must be really good at this. I'm impressed. So yes, this piece came from Lanterns, the Emperor's Gift, which is the expansion for Lanterns, not the regular Lanterns, the Harvest Festival box. So Jon, thank you for playing. And for everybody else, I'm impressed. A lot of you figured out Lanterns right away. And we will be sending Jon both regular Lanterns and the expansion. So nice. A little bit of extra fun for that. All right, and we are looking for a few other things that we've been doing this week. It's been a really busy week for Renegade. We haven't had a ton of announcements, but that's because we're building up for next week. And we've been working on putting together prototypes for GAMA as well. And that's because we're going to be playing all these games with retailers. So if the retailer of your local game store is going to GAMA, definitely check with them, because they're going to get to play some stuff that isn't out there yet, that nobody has seen before. So that's pretty exciting. I've been doing all sorts of arts and crafts, trying to make these prototypes to show off. Scott makes fun of me a lot about it, but that's okay.
Well, yeah. So earlier today, we had a bunch of the team on Skype, and with a designer that we're working on for this project, and we're talking about the project, and we're going through it, and we've got 4 or 5 of us on there, and all of a sudden you hear, and I just go, Sarah, are you doing arts and crafts? Sarah always forgets to mute her mic. So we just hear like her crunching through cardboard with a scissor.
I'm excited. It's going to be a fun game. But yes, it was very loud. It's better than eating Cheetos or something. That's probably what I'd be doing otherwise.
You haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that's true. Awesome. All right. And we did have a few game updates for tonight as well. So this is kind of cool. This is another thing that we're doing special for GAMA that we have not talked about anywhere else yet. For Clank the Mummy's Curse, we want to celebrate that coming out in a couple weeks by giving everyone who pre-orders it a little bit of a bonus. So if you go to your local friendly game store and pre-order it with them, if they have gotten a hold of us or if they went to GAMA, then they're going to have a special promo card for you. So you can see a sneak peek of the Mummy's Curse before it comes out. So check with your local retailer. If they want more info, they're welcome to contact us or me as well. They can go to customer service at renegadegames.com and we'll give them all the info they need about how to get a hold of those. So it's definitely worth it to pre-order Clank the Mummy's Curse. So that should be fun. We're excited to give those out to retailers next week.
Can I have one of those?
No, they're very limited. I'm sorry, ran out.
but I pre-ordered a lot.
You did pre-order a lot. That's true.
Like a lot.
Maybe a boatload even.
Right. I only want one. I don't want one card per game.
Yeah, you can't have one per game. That would be ridiculous. Okay, fine. We'll give you one, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
Another few things that people might be excited about. Today is the final day to enter to win Lucidity. And then the next giveaway that we're going to be doing is Sabotage. So Steph can give you any info you want about that if you want to ask her. But definitely go and sign up for Lucidity if you want a chance to win that. That's going to be a really cool game. We're actually going to be teaching every retailer that comes to our seminars how to play Lucidity and Topiary this week, which is pretty cool. And then next week, we are also going to be filming. We were going to only do this every other week when we started, but it's been too much fun and we can't help ourselves. So we just keep adding in extra weeks. So next week, we're going to be filming live from GAMA with the help of one of our media friends, Big Rick from Game Trade Media. He has an incredible setup. He's got fancy microphones, all of the stuff that we need. So he's going to set that all up for us. And we're going to actually be sitting next to each other and filming and interview Big Rick.
You and I are going to be sitting next to each other?
We might put Rick in between us because I don't know if that's a good idea.
That sounds
better. Nice. Awesome. It's going to be fun. If you want to see a fantastic video, go look up Rick and Scott and I playing Clank. That's fantastic. It was a really good game. One of those experiences.
Cheats.
Just because I'm so much better at you than you doesn't mean I cheat. It just means
I went for it in that game. Down into the dungeon, under the water, got the most valuable artifact. Well, maybe I didn't make it all the way down, but I tried. I really, really tried.
Tried and died.
Yeah, people should watch that video so they can see Sarah for her true self.
It was an experience for sure. Very nice. So yeah, please join us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, all that good stuff. And that should be fun. Thank you so much, Jon, for coming and giving us all your insight into Kids on Bikes and how you design and your experience-motivated design plans. That was really cool. I loved all your answers. So thanks for informing us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And my son Jameson thanks you too, because he's so excited about this game. So I think out of everything that Renegade has made, he's like, blah, whatever. Give me that. Give me Kids on Bikes. So that's pretty cool.
It's going to be a blast. I really can't wait for this one to come out. It's going to be awesome.
I'm really excited for people to get it.
Cool.
Very cool. Awesome. So everybody go pre-order Kids on Bikes. You can order that on our website or at your friendly local game store. So awesome. And thank you guys in chat for enjoying us and coming every week. We wouldn't do it without you. So have fun. Have a wonderful week. And we will see you all on the Renegade Society Radio next week.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.